Welcome back to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay in Washington, D.C., and joining us again is Bob Pollin from the Perry Institute. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Paul.
The argument goes like this when it comes to the military, militarization, and the economy, that the military has played an important role in spill-off effect to the non-military sector of the economy. So the famous ones, the internet, but there's any number of pieces of technology that have been developed for the military that then have commercial, public, you could say, application. And it's a driving force that's given some of the dynamism to the U.S. economy. So is that true or not?
It's absolutely true that the industrial policy that's taken place within the military for a century, really, has developed all the major technical innovations that we've experienced in the economy. I mean, you can point to jet aviation, well, aviation in general. You can point to the computer, and the one you mentioned, the internet. Imagine our economy without jet aviation, without the computer, and without the internet. All of these were developed within the framework of the military sector. And the way the military was able to do it was to nurture these, supporting research and development, yes, decisively, but also supporting a guaranteed market, what we would call government procurement, creating a large-scale market that allowed these innovations to nurture over time without having to face, the cruel test of the market within a year or two. And in fact, there's a very important book by Vernon Rutan of the University of Minnesota, who poses the question, is war necessary for economic growth? And he's a completely mainstream economist. His answer was yes. Now, it's not that war was necessary for economic growth. His argument was that industrial policy is necessary for economic growth, and the only way we're getting industrial policy in this country is through the military. The implication is if we could pursue a solid industrial policy through means other than the military, other than the Pentagon, we could see comparable kinds of benefits.
So your point is if you do this essentially for somehow psychologically in the United States, the military is not considered big government. And I don't know how Republicans and others get their head around that, but big government here and military as if it's not connected to government over there. Right. You're saying if you drop this kind of psychological barrier and realize that it is about government expenditure, you can solve this, but you don't have to do it through war.
Right. I mean, you never had to do it through war. I mean, most of the activity around creating the computer was not per se for war. And of course, now we use the computer for anything. And so the point is now we face these gigantic hurdles in terms of maintaining a manufacturing capacity in Detroit, building a clean energy economy, renewable energy sector. And these new technologies that need to come on stream also require the same kind of nurturing that the computer, the jet aviation, and the internet received through the military. So what we need to do is create a similar kind of industrial policy that does the same thing. And there are two key features, and this book by Professor Rutan emphasizes both. Yes, support research and development, but equally important is the notion of a guaranteed market, procurement, because without that, the research and development, they won't know where to sell it for a long time.
So your argument would go then, someone would say, where's the money come from? You'll say, well, all this money that's being spent now in the Pentagon,
right,
in supposedly more or less under the rubric to create jobs, get it out of the military sector and put it into the infrastructure.
Absolutely. I mean, if we think about what are the real long-term challenges we face, obviously creating a clean energy economy, fighting climate change is the crucial long-term issue for the survival of the planet. What about, other issues, job creation? What about creating decent school systems and a healthcare system? These things also need to be nurtured through the same kinds of industrial policy, and they create more jobs in the process. So the military model is useful for understanding how you build industrial policy and not just rely on the rhetoric of a free market, because we never had a free market in creating these major technologies that are the cornerstone of our economy. The aviation industry, computer industry, internet. None of them were built on the basis of a free market.
Thanks for joining us.
Okay.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.